Welcome to the Hemlock State Explorer. We are on an adventure today at a very special place, the Hopewell Furnace National Historic Site. And as I pan around, you can see that we are in the hills of southern Berks County, northern Chester County, and this was iron country. Now this is such a special place because it is one of the best preserved examples of the iron plantation, and this really was the heart of the colonial iron industry in this area on account of the abundance of the natural resources required to make iron, that is high quality iron ore, limestone for the flux, water power, and hardwood forests for the charcoal. So we're going behind the visitor center, and I encourage you to stop in at the visitor center because there's an abundance of information on the iron making process and some really cool artifacts. So here's the visitor center and the restroom behind us. Down here, this large white building is the Iron Master's Mansion, and just ahead is the furnace. So stick with us. Really excited to be here today, and there's a lot of people out. It's a gloriously beautiful fall day, and as we're walking down, I just want to take a moment to ask you to please like, subscribe, and share, and check out all of our adventures at the HemlockStateExplorer.com. What you see in front of you is a collier's hut. Colliers were the people who took the hardwood and converted it into charcoal by burning it in a low oxygen environment, and charcoal of course burns much hotter than just plain wood. So charcoal was used to make iron before coal was widely used. And I'll pan over here to the left and show you the charcoal pit that's used in demonstrations from time to time. So the wood would be cut into what were called billets, and they were stacked into a semi-pyramidal shape and then packed with earth on top. And there's actually some pictures of what these piles of billets look like. We just paused for a minute to let the Boy Scout troop pass through. I'm glad to see that they're here. But as I was saying, that this pile of wood, if you see that pole sticking out in the middle, a fire would be lit down and start combusting the wood in a low oxygen environment so that it wouldn't burn completely, and that's how charcoal was made. So the colliers lived in these huts because they were responsible for these burning piles of wood to convert the wood into charcoal, and it was very much an art and a science, and they had to tend these 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in all weather. So they were known for being rough outdoorsmen. Sometimes had the reputation of being antisocial or even hard drinkers, but they lived out in the woods and tended these piles to generate the necessary charcoal to make iron. These are the remains of the anthracite furnace, built in 1853. It used anthracite as fuel rather than charcoal, but operation only lasted about 4 years, so it probably wasn't economically feasible. And you can still see here what was left in the crucible in its last blast. Take a look up, just ruins now, but you can go around back and through some of the ruins, so let's do that. Now it's fascinating that these at one time would have been considered high tech. So we're back against the hillside, and furnaces would have been built against hillsides, so you could access the top easily to dump in your raw materials. Now coming out the side, the front of the furnace is ahead of us. Down in here is the crucible. And then we can even go through these tunnels. Bit of a tight squeeze. There we go. And here we are, there's the crucible again. And then back through the tunnel. Fascinating technology, fascinating history. We'll head back out to the front of the old 1853 anthracite furnace. So from the collier's hut, we're heading east to the cooling shed, which is the open-sided structure to the left, and directly in front of us, the storage shed for the limestone and the iron ore. The cooling shed, which we're entering now, is where the freshly made charcoal would be placed to cool. And as you can see, here are some wagons used for various purposes of hauling materials, and in through these windows you can see the storage shed for the iron ore and limestone. We'll go around to the other side and get a better look. So back out underneath the cooling shed, let's head down to the storage shed and then the iron furnace itself. Coming out, you can see the ironmaster's mansion directly in front of you, the shop, and the barn beyond that. That structure directly ahead is the furnace and the molding house below it. But we'll turn around to the storage shed. Alright, so this is the storage shed. So from the storage shed, workers would fill these wheelbarrows with the raw materials, iron ore and limestone, and transport them all day underneath this covered walkway into the top of the furnace, where they would deposit the materials down into the fire below. It's a glorious fall day, and this is the place to be. So while we're waiting for some folks to enjoy their time in the furnace area, I just want to show you the beautiful countryside around Hopewell Furnace. There's the ironmaster's mansion again, the molding house with that steeple structure above it, and then something fascinating I can't wait to get to, but we'll look at it a little bit later, is the raceway and the water wheel and the bellows that provided power to blast the air into this blast furnace. Alright, now it's our turn to go into the furnace structure, and we're actually approaching the top of the furnace. So imagine you're working 12 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week, hauling back and forth heavy carts filled with limestone and iron ore, and you would take them with all the fumes and smoke coming up and dump them into that hole to feed the furnace. And here's a good representation of how the iron ore was made. We're up here at the top, the tunnel for loading. But as you're looking at that, let me read to you. Workers known as fillers unloaded iron ore, charcoal, and limestone into this furnace's stack. The water wheel powered a pair of cylindrical bellows which forced air into the furnace, helping to create the heat needed to make iron. A furnace worker or founder controlled the quality of iron by varying amounts of iron ore, limestone, and charcoal, and air blast. White iron flowed into channels to make pig iron bars. We'll see that in a moment. When a founder tapped gray iron, he sounded the casting house bell and signaled the molders to cast finished products. So we'll go see the casting house. We'll go see the bellows, but here's how the iron was made. So the materials that were mentioned, the charcoal, the iron ore, and the limestone for flux, were loaded up here into the tunnel in successive layers, as you can see. Charcoal, then on top iron ore, then on top limestone, just repeating that. And the fire below would melt and consume the fuel and melt the iron ore, and then the limestone for the slag would carry out the impurities. And then to the left we see the tweer, that is the air duct through which the air from the bellows was forced, that is blasted down into the crucible. And then to the right of the hearthstone we see where the molten pig iron would be tapped. Fascinating technology on which our nation really depended for its development and growth. So let's go take a look at the rest of the iron furnace. We are inside the casting house and actually at the bottom of the furnace. And then that black vessel is not original to the furnace, but if you see just behind it, let me zoom in. Right where we're looking at is where the molten iron would be tapped periodically, and there was definitely a science and an art to it. And if you see in the floor here, there would have been clay or sand at the floor at the base of the furnace, and trenches would be dug, and when the molten iron was released from the bottom of the furnace, it would fill the trench and make these bars that you see right here. And it was called pig iron because those side trenches coming off of the main trench looked like pigs suckling the sow, hence pig iron. But that's the end product of the iron making process. Fascinating in the design and ingenuity to come up with this, to take the raw materials and turn it into something useful and necessary for the development of our civilization. And as we turn aside from the furnace proper, we'll see some of the materials that were made. So we see some stove plates here. Out in front there's a cannon, and you can see a photo of that on hemlockstateexplorer.com. Now we're going to head into probably one of my favorite parts, which is the water wheel. So if you look to our left, here is the furnace proper, and that's the tweer, the pipe that ran from the bellows. The bellows up here, the pipe ran from the bellows down into the furnace to blast the hot air, providing oxygen for combustion. And I love the water wheel. It's ingenious. So we'll look at it a little bit later, but there was a raceway diverting water from French Creek to power the water wheel, and then that water wheel would drive pistons through those looks like big wooden barrels, would drive pistons up and down through them into that box where you see the tweer coming out, and then that would force air into the furnace. So while you're looking at that, let me read to you from this sign here how this worked. Oh wow, that's a nice picture. You see the water even just dropping and splattering off the water wheel. This water wheel powered Hopewell's blast machinery. The two blowing tubs, and there are the blowing tubs at the top, the two blowing tubs continuously forced air into the furnace to intensify its heat. By 1822, blowing tubs replaced bellows. Piston rods attached to each end of the water wheel shaft moved pistons inside the tubs and compressed air. The air forced into an equalizing box, that's right there. The air forced into an equalizing box between the tubs was directed through a blast pipe that led into the furnace. There's the blast pipe. The water wheel you see has been restored by the National Park Service. So there you go. And there's the diagram. But I had read elsewhere that these water wheels, being wood of course, had to be replaced periodically. And I believe it's because the axle in there would eventually just from the amount of weight that it supported would eventually just wear out and break. I forget how many tons this water wheel is. I read somewhere, maybe at Cornwall Iron Furnace, but that's an enormous amount of weight resting on that axle. And you can see right here that rod and the piston. You can see it move. Yeah, you can see the piston going up and down into those tubs. Fascinating. All right, so this is the casting house. Many different things were made here. Many of the things made were forged, and many were cast. And maybe if you remember this, you might have done this in high school, where you made a sand mold, and here's the process here that you can see for making a sand mold, where the sand was packed into a box, and then there was a certain shape that was impressed upon the sand. The mold was closed up, and then hot molten iron ore was poured into the mold, and then after a time, after cooling, you would remove the box, remove the sand, and you would have your cast product. Fascinating. So here's where the molders, that is the people who worked in the casting house, would have worked. And then you can see the furnace is just on the other side. Well, I mean, the furnace is really adjacent to the work area, and in the casting house, that's the stone we see right there is the stone of the furnace. So come on out with me, and we will look at the rest of the property here. At the beginning, you remember. Well, let's turn aside here. Here's some more. Here's a workshop area supporting the casting house. So earlier on, you heard me refer to this as an iron plantation, and we're going to see why that is. Come on out of the casting house. We're behind Hopewell Furnace, and you can see the storage shed just up ahead to the left and the covered walkway into the furnace. And here's the flume that supplies water to power the water wheel. Just wanted to show you this because it's fascinating. It diverts water from French Creek into this structure that houses the water wheel, and here is the water from the flume powering the water wheel. And you actually get to see a really good view of the water wheel actuating the piston up into the bellows above. Fascinating. Alright, so you heard me say before that Hopewell Furnace is an iron plantation because there was far more here than just the furnace. There would be an entire community that built around the furnace to support both the furnace directly and then support all the secondary operations. that would be needed to support an entire community. And you can see directly ahead, here's some sheep in this yard here resting. So there's the barn for the animals, and the wagons and carriages with the green shutters is the ironmaster's mansion. And we're looking at the backside of the shop slash clerk's office. We'll see all that in a little bit, but let's take a turn aside here and look at the blacksmith's shop. So here's the molding house and the furnace, and then of course for items that were forged, you would need this blacksmith shop. Okay, there's the forge. Here's all the tools that the smith would use. A large bellows. It's an informational poster. But here it is, the blacksmith shop. All right, leaving the blacksmith shop, let's turn right across this bridge and we'll see where the remnants of the village were. Look here, I'll read the sign. On either side of the road in front of you are homes where iron workers once lived. In the mid-1800s, tenants paid $12 to $25 a year to rent a house here, while other families lived off furnace property or rented near mines. Although residents were close to the work at the furnace, they faced discomforts of noise, dust, and wagons steadily creaking up and down this road. To your right are the ruins of a schoolhouse built by the furnace company in 1837. Let's explore the interior of a tenant house. There's a stove and table, kitchen setup. That's the door to the upstairs. We can only take a look at the downstairs, but here it is. Let me zoom out a bit. Sleeping area. All right, let's head out and explore some more of the tenant houses. Just before we go, just look how beautiful this hillside is with the fall colors just starting. And then at the end of the lane, this larger structure would be the boarding house. I'm just going to pan down through so you can see what all of this looks like together. And then there's the furnace down at the end. This is just a really beautiful time of the year. You can see the white bark of the sycamores with the freshly painted white of the buildings and the foothills. It's just a beautiful, beautiful time of year. The leaves changing, the dry grass of the field. Man, this is just a beautiful place. I really hope you can make it out here. The history, of course, is phenomenal. The preservation is excellent. And just the natural beauty on top of that makes this so worth your while to get out here. Okay, you are looking in the distance where we just were, where the tenant houses are located. We are back partway up the hill. Here's the furnace, and we are making our way to the store slash clerk's office. Being that this was a company town, workers were often paid not in cash but in company store credit. Take a look inside here. And this is where you would order and receive your supplies. This says the Buckley and Brook office and store. The Buckley and Brook office and store was the nerve center of furnace operations. Here the clerk kept business records and sold articles needed by the Hopewell residents and neighbors. The clerk was also the paymaster, keeping track of each worker's earnings in the company journals. Workers could draw against their accounts to purchase goods for their families. Some items were ordered from as far away as Philadelphia and other large cities. The women of Hopewell also brought eggs, vegetables, and handmade goods to sell at the store in order to provide extra income for their households. Feed and flour bins are located in the adjoining shed. The lower level was used for storage and a butcher shop. The ironmaster operated this store for the convenience of his workers and often took a loss to bring quality goods to Hopewell at reasonable prices. During the spring, summer, and autumn, the office and store operates much like a 19th century store, offering visitors the chance to browse and purchase reproduction redware, glassware, and handcraft kits and games. All right, we are just east of the company store. This large structure you're looking at is the barn, and down here is the spring house. And this is well before refrigerators, so this is where you would keep your items cool. Food or other items that needed to be kept cool were placed in these crocks. And here is your spring-fed pool, where you would place the crocks to keep them cool. You'll notice the interiors of all these structures are white to maximize the little bit of sunlight that gets in these buildings. All right, let's head out of the spring house. Here's another section where the spring flows through the structure. All right, let's head out of the spring house to the bake ovens. We are back up at the mansion. I just wanted to show you in the back at the bottom where the servants' doors would be is the bake oven. So this would have been a wood-fired oven, not the convenience of electric or gas where you just turn the dial. But temperature would be determined by, I don't know if we can open these up. We'll give it a shot. Oh yeah, okay, we can open it up. So fire would be kindled in there, and temperature would be determined by how long you can stick your arm there and hold it in. So there's a sign up there, I don't know how well you can see it. Sundays was baking day in rural America. Wood fires were built in ovens and allowed to burn down. Ashes and coals were raked into the hole in front of the oven. Ovens were mopped out with a swab dipped in salt water. Bread and pastries were put into the oven with a long-handled baker's peel. Baking time for bread was about 1 hour. So it makes you really appreciate the modern conveniences we have. So now, perhaps as the pinnacle of our adventure, we'll take a look at the Ironmaster's mansion. So here is the Ironmaster's mansion, where the Ironmaster and the clerk and their families would live. We are going to have a great blessing today. The building is open. Oftentimes I've come here, it's not been open, but just check out this porch first, and love these wall height windows. But let's go in and take a look. I'll try to keep my commentary to a minimum, and you can take it in. So here's the staircase. This mansion has 4 floors and 19 rooms. Parlor area. Let's go see what's on the other side of the hallway. It's like a tea set, some games, music, sofa, doors to other parts of the mansion we can't get into, but I'm thankful that we're at least able to see some of this. And this looks like the dining room area. Check out that spread. And back there looks to be a kitchen area. So this house is beautiful. It would have been imposing and glorious compared to the things around it, but as nice as this was, I guess being the Iron Master, you were the owner and the general manager of the entire plantation, so I guess you would never really leave work. This would be a high responsibility, high authority, full-time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week job. And also you would be right next to you see right there, that's the iron furnace. You would be right next to that iron furnace pumping out smoke and soot and even sparks from time to time. Here's a view from the porch. Beautiful area. And here it is, the Iron Master's mansion, a view from the north side. And we'll close out by panning around the Iron Master's mansion. There's a proverb that says it's the glory of the Lord to hide a matter, but the glory of kings to find a matter out. And that's what I think about when I see things like iron furnaces, about how the Lord created the world and put these raw materials in place and made us in his image so that we would express his greatness and glory through us, his intelligence, by figuring out how to take these raw materials out of the ground and make something useful and beautiful and really necessary for survival and human prospering. And I often think to myself what it would have been like to be that person who noticed that that rock in the fire has something melting out of it, and how the connection was made that that you can make that into something like iron. But anyway, I really appreciate you joining me today on really what is one of the best preserved iron plantations. So this has been the place to be on a beautiful fall day. We've seen just about every person here, from Boy Scout troops to older folks and young families and people just out enjoying the beauty and the history of the place. And I hope you can come out here too, just south of Birdsboro in the very southern tip of Berks County to Hopewell Furnace. It is the best example of the best preserved example of an iron plantation that I'm aware of. Please also check out our other videos on this YouTube channel and join us on all of our adventures at HemlockStateExplorer.com.